Lisa. The voice shook her to her core. She paused, the silver tray in her hands suddenly feeling heavier than it ever had before. She had never expected to see him again, especially not here, not like this. Jack Anderson, the billionaire tech mogul, standing right in front of her. He hadn't changed much. Still the same sharp jawline, still the same piercing blue eyes that never missed a thing. But Lisa had changed. Her life was no longer the life of a carefree college student. It was the life of a mother, struggling, working endless hours at this restaurant just to make ends meet for her daughter. But today, fate had different plans. He was sitting at the table right in front of her, his eyes searching her face as if trying to place her. Lisa Miller, he said, a hint of disbelief in his voice. Lisa's heart dropped. The years had passed, but the memories were fresh, like it had all happened yesterday. She had tried to forget the past, bury the pain of losing everything. But here it was, staring her in the face. What are you doing here? Jack's voice was quieter now, his eyes narrowing slightly. Lisa could feel the weight of his gaze on her, his curiosity now mixed with confusion. She cleared her throat, trying to maintain her composure. I'm just doing my job, Mr. Anderson, she replied, the professional tone she had honed over the years slipping into her voice. She forced a smile, hoping it would cover the hurt she felt. Jack seemed to process her words, his brow furrowing as if he couldn't quite connect the dots. Lisa had been his best friend once, long ago, before everything fell apart, before she vanished from his life without a word. And now, here she was, standing in front of him, a waitress at a high-end restaurant, a far cry from the ambitious woman he once knew. He leaned back in his chair, studying her, and for a moment, there was silence. Lisa, he said again, his tone now softer, almost like he was trying to understand. What happened? Why did you disappear? Why? Why are you here doing this? Lisa's heart clenched, the question hitting too close to home. She took a deep breath and steadied herself. Life happens, Jack, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Things change. People change. She couldn't bring herself to explain it all. How could she? He would never understand the pain she had gone through. The struggles, the sacrifices, the things she had done just to survive. Jack leaned forward, his eyes still on her, his curiosity growing by the second. There was something in his gaze now, something more than just a passing interest. It was like he was searching for something he couldn't quite put his finger on. And then, as if the weight of the moment became too much to bear, she turned to leave, her heart racing in her chest. But just as she reached the door, Jack's voice stopped her. Lisa, wait, he called out. She froze. Slowly, she turned to face him again. This time, his expression was different. There was a hint of recognition, of regret, and something else she couldn't quite place. There's something I need to tell you, he said, his voice barely audible now, as if he was struggling with the words. I don't think you realize how much things have changed. How much? I've changed. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine as she looked at him, wondering what he was about to say. She knew that this moment, this conversation, was going to change everything. But she couldn't bring herself to ask the question that burned in her mind. Would he still care about her once he learned the truth? The truth she had kept hidden for so long. Lisa stood still for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. Jack's words echoed in her ears, the weight of his curiosity pressing down on her. She had tried so hard to move on, to bury the past, but here he was again, a reminder of everything she had left behind. She could feel the old emotions stirring inside her, the ones she thought she had long since suppressed. Jack had always been the ambitious one, the one with the drive to succeed. And here he was, asking her about her life, as if everything was still the same. But it wasn't. She wasn't the same person he once knew. Jack, she finally said, her voice steady but soft, you don't understand. Things aren't the way they seem. Jack's eyes softened slightly as he studied her. He could see the hesitation in her face, the walls she had built around herself. He leaned forward, his gaze never leaving hers. I don't care about the past, Lisa, he said, his voice calm but insistent. I just want to know what happened. Why are you here? Why did you leave? Lisa closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts. She had never intended to let Jack back into her life, not like this. But now, with him standing in front of her, she felt like the walls she had built around herself were crumbling. It's not that simple, she said quietly. looking down at the tray in her hands. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know the sacrifices I've had to make. Jack's expression softened further. He had always respected Lisa's strength, but this was different. She wasn't just the girl he had once known. She was a woman, carrying the weight of a life he had never fully understood. Tell me, Lisa, he said gently. I want to understand. I want to help if I can. She met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and frustration. It's Emily, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She's my daughter. And she's yours. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He stared at her, unable to process the words she had just said. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of what she was telling him. What do you mean? He stammered. I'm not. But Lisa interrupted him, her eyes filled with pain. I'm not asking for anything, Jack, she said, her voice trembling. I just wanted you to know. She deserves to know the truth. Jack stood up, his mind still spinning from the revelation. His heart raced as he tried to wrap his head around what Lisa had just said. He had never expected this, never thought he would find himself in this situation. But why, Lisa? Why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice low and filled with confusion. Lisa took a deep breath, her eyes avoiding his. I tried to contact you, Jack, after everything happened, but you were unreachable. I couldn't get through. And then I had to make a choice. I had to protect her. Jack felt a pang of guilt in his chest. He had been so focused on his own success, his own world, that he had never stopped to think about the people he had left behind. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice full of regret. I never knew. Lisa nodded, her expression unreadable. I know, but now you do. There was a long silence between them, the weight of the truth hanging in the air. Jack felt a strange sense of disbelief, as if the ground beneath him had shifted. Everything he had known, everything he had worked for, seemed so insignificant now. What do we do now? He asked, his voice barely audible. Lisa took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. I don't know, she replied softly, but I need to figure it out. For her. Jack looked at her, his mind still racing. The truth had come crashing down on him, and he didn't know how to handle it. But one thing was certain. This was only the beginning of a journey that would change everything. Jack couldn't shake off the weight of Lisa's words. As he walked down the street after leaving the restaurant, his thoughts raced in 1,000 directions. He had always prided himself on control, on making calculated decisions that led him to success. But now, here he was, lost in a storm of emotions he hadn't expected. He kept thinking about Emily, his daughter, the daughter he never knew he had, the daughter who had grown up without him all these years. He had been so caught up in his own world that he hadn't even known she existed. The thought of what he had missed, of the life he could have had, weighed on him. But there was more. Lisa. He had always thought of her as just a chapter from his past, someone he had once known but left behind. But now, she was back in his life, and everything had changed. The truth had hit him like a wave, and he wasn't sure what to do next. He had always believed that people had their roles in life. He was the successful businessman, and Lisa was the quiet, hard-working woman. But now, it seemed their roles had been rewritten, and he wasn't sure how to navigate this new reality. Jack stopped in front of his building, staring up at the tall glass windows that reflected the lights of the city. It all felt so meaningless now. He had everything he could ever want, wealth, power, status, but none of it mattered. Not without the one thing that truly mattered. Family. He hadn't realized how much he had craved that connection until now. How much he had longed for something real, something that wasn't just about numbers and deals. He walked into the lobby, his mind still reeling from the conversation with Lisa. The elevator ride up to his penthouse felt like an eternity. He couldn't escape the thoughts that were consuming him. He needed answers, and the only person who could give them to him was Lisa. He couldn't leave things like this, with so many questions still unanswered. He had to know more. He had to know about Emily. About everything. But what could he even say to Lisa? How could he fix the mistakes of the past, the things he had done or failed to do? The truth was, he didn't know where to begin. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't just walk away from this. Not this time. As he stepped into his apartment, he grabbed his phone and dialed Lisa's number. His finger hovered over the screen for a moment, and then he pressed call. The phone rang 3 times before she picked up. Lisa, Jack said, his voice softer than he expected. It's Jack. I need to talk to you. Can we meet? There was a long pause on the other end, and for a moment, Jack thought she might hang up. But then she spoke, her voice guarded but steady. "What do you want to talk about, Jack?" she asked. "About everything," he replied, his heart racing. "About Emily. About us." The silence stretched on again, but this time it was different. It wasn't a silence of distance, but of something more. Something fragile. "Okay," Lisa said finally. "Where?" Jack thought for a moment. "How about tomorrow? I know a quiet place. We can talk there." "All right," Lisa replied. "Tomorrow." Jack hung up the phone, a sense of determination settling over him. Tomorrow. It was the first step toward understanding everything, toward reconnecting with the past and building something new. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, he felt like he had a chance to get it right. The next day, Jack arrived at the quiet cafe he had chosen, his heart pounding with anticipation. He had spent the whole night replaying the conversation in his mind, trying to prepare himself for what was about to unfold. But no matter how much he thought about it, he still didn't know what to expect. As he walked into the dimly lit room, he spotted Lisa sitting at a table by the window, her back straight, her eyes focused on the cup in front of her. She looked up as soon as he approached, and for a moment, there was an uncomfortable silence between them. She didn't smile. She didn't look surprised to see him. It was like nothing had changed, even though everything had. "Jack," Lisa said quietly, her voice guarded. "You wanted to talk." Jack sat down across from her, his eyes not leaving hers. "Yes," he said, his voice steady, but inside, his emotions were a whirlwind. "I've been thinking about everything, Lisa. About Emily. About what you told me." Lisa's gaze softened, just slightly. She took a deep breath, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "I didn't want to tell you, Jack," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to drag you into this. But she's yours. She deserves to know her father. She deserves to know the truth." Jack swallowed hard, trying to process her words. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I've spent so many years building my life, my career. I never even knew she existed." Lisa nodded, a flicker of something, regret, maybe, passing through her eyes. "I know, but I couldn't just keep her away from you forever. She's your daughter, Jack. She needs to know who you are, and you need to know her." Jack felt a lump form in his throat. He had always wanted a family, but he had never imagined it like this. He had always thought it would come later in life, when he was ready for it. But now, it was here, and it felt like everything he had ever worked for had led him to this moment. "I want to be a part of her life," Jack said, his voice firm, yet tinged with uncertainty. "But I don't know how. I don't even know where to start." Lisa's expression softened. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. It's going to take time. But she's a part of you, Jack. And I believe she deserves the chance to know her father, just like you deserve the chance to know her." There was a long pause as Jack absorbed her words. The weight of the situation settled over him, but it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a chance, an opportunity to make something right, to build a relationship with his daughter. Slowly, he reached for his coffee, his fingers trembling slightly. "So what happens now?" he asked, his voice quieter. Lisa looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and caution. "Now, we take it one step at a time. We talk to Emily. We figure out how to move forward. Together." Jack nodded, his mind still racing. But for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of clarity. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he had to try. He had to be a part of Emily's life. And for the first time, he was ready to take that step. "I'm in," he said, his voice steady, determined. "I'm ready to be her father." The next few days passed in a blur for Jack. His thoughts kept drifting back to Emily, to the life he never knew he had. The reality of being a father was overwhelming, but it was a challenge he was ready to face. He couldn't stop thinking about the moment he would meet her. The anticipation gnawed at him, and though he had reached out to Lisa, they hadn't yet made plans. Jack knew this wasn't something to rush. He needed to approach it carefully, not just for his own sake, but for Emily's as well. She didn't know him. She didn't know anything about him, and he wasn't sure what kind of impact his sudden appearance would have on her. His phone buzzed on the coffee table, interrupting his thoughts. It was a message from Lisa. "Emily wants to meet you. Tomorrow afternoon. 3 p.m. at the park. I'll bring her." Jack's heart skipped a beat. He quickly typed a response. "I'll be there. Thank you, Lisa." The rest of the day felt like it dragged on forever. Jack's mind raced, running through 1,000 scenarios of how the meeting would go. What should he say to her? How could he make her feel comfortable? The uncertainty of it all left him restless, pacing through his penthouse. But one thing was clear. He had to be there. He had to see her. When the next day finally arrived, Jack was up early. He didn't want to risk being late. Not for this. He dressed carefully, choosing a simple yet elegant outfit that wouldn't overwhelm her, but still conveyed that he was someone important. As he walked to the park, his mind wandered to his own childhood. He had grown up with both parents, always taken care of, always loved. But how would it feel for Emily to meet a father she never knew? He could only imagine the whirlwind of emotions she must be feeling. When he arrived at the park, he saw Lisa sitting on a bench, her back straight, her eyes scanning the area. But it was Emily who caught his attention. She was sitting next to Lisa, her small hands gripping the edge of the bench. She was looking down, her dark hair falling into her face. Jack felt his heart tighten. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. He walked over slowly, unsure of how to approach. As soon as Emily noticed him, she looked up, her eyes widening slightly. Lisa stood up and smiled at him, her expression softening. "Emily," Lisa said gently, "this is Jack. Your father." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, Emily didn't move. She just stared at Jack, her eyes filled with curiosity and hesitation. Jack took a deep breath, crouching down to her level. "Hi, Emily," he said, his voice soft and kind. "I'm Jack. I know this is a lot, but I'm really happy to finally meet you." Emily blinked, her eyes flickering between him and Lisa. "You're my dad?" she asked, her voice quiet, uncertain. Jack smiled gently, nodding. "Yes, I'm your dad." Emily looked back at Lisa, as if searching for confirmation. Lisa nodded reassuringly, and then Emily turned her gaze back to Jack. There was a long pause before she spoke again. "Why didn't you come before?" she asked, her voice small. Jack's heart ached at her question, but he didn't hesitate. "I'm sorry, Emily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know about you. But now that I do, I want to be a part of your life. I want to make up for lost time." Emily's expression softened slightly, though she still looked unsure. "What if I don't want to?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. Jack's heart dropped, but he didn't back down. "That's okay," he said gently. "I'll give you all the time you need. But I'm here now, and I want to be there for you whenever you're ready." Emily looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then, finally, she nodded, just barely. "Okay," she said quietly. Jack smiled, relief flooding through him. It was a small step, but it was a start. The start of something he never thought he would have. A chance to build a relationship with his daughter, to be the father she deserved. And he was ready to do whatever it took to make it work. The following weeks were a whirlwind for Jack. He had expected the first meeting with Emily to be difficult, but he hadn't anticipated the depth of the emotions that came with it. Each day, he felt a mixture of joy and uncertainty. Emily was slowly warming to him, but there were still moments of distance, moments where she would retreat back into herself. Jack respected that. He knew he couldn't rush her. He had already lost so much time, and he wasn't going to make the same mistake now. Lisa had been there, guiding him through the process, offering advice on how to approach Emily, when to give her space, and when to push a little. Jack knew that rebuilding a relationship was going to take time, but he was ready for it. He had to be. His office, once the center of his world, felt distant now. The deals, the investments, the pressure, it all felt insignificant compared to the promise he had made to Emily. Every night, he found himself thinking about her, wondering what she was doing, what she was feeling. She was a smart girl, with so much potential, but her world had been so different from his. He had always been surrounded by luxury and privilege, while Emily had grown up in a small apartment with Lisa, just the two of them. He could only imagine the challenges she had faced, the things she had learned on her own. One Saturday afternoon, Jack decided to do something different. He had made plans with Emily to meet at a park near her school. He wanted to take her to lunch, to give her a taste of something beyond the usual. He wasn't sure what exactly he wanted to show her, but he knew that he wanted her to see another side of life, to feel the world outside of what she had known. When he arrived, Emily was sitting on a bench, her arms crossed, looking down at her shoes. Jack approached cautiously, unsure of how to start the conversation. "Hey, Emily," he said gently. She looked up at him, her expression neutral. "Hi," she said quietly. "How was school?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Fine, she replied, her tone flat. Jack could tell she wasn't really engaging, but he didn't want to push her. I was thinking we could grab lunch, he said, offering a small smile. Maybe try something new? Emily hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Okay, she said, standing up slowly. They walked to a nearby cafe, the conversation light, but awkward. Jack didn't mind. He wasn't expecting everything to fall into place immediately. But as they sat down at a table, Jack noticed a shift in Emily. She was no longer looking at the menu or her phone. Instead, she was watching him closely. So, she said after a moment of silence, why now? Jack blinked, caught off guard by the question. What do you mean? Why did you decide to come back now? She asked, her voice softer but still filled with curiosity. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He had thought about this moment, but he hadn't prepared for it to come so soon. I didn't know about you, Emily, he said quietly. I didn't know you existed until recently. But now that I do, I want to be here for you. I want to make up for the time we lost. Emily studied him for a long moment. But why should I trust you? She asked. Jack swallowed, the weight of her words sinking in. I can't change the past, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But I can try to make the future better. I'll be here for you, no matter what. I'm not going anywhere. Emily's eyes softened slightly, but she didn't respond right away. Instead, she reached for her glass of water, taking a sip before meeting his gaze again. I guess that's all I can ask for, she said quietly. Jack felt a surge of relief wash over him. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was a start. A small, fragile step toward the relationship they both needed. And Jack was willing to take it, no matter how long it took. He wasn't going to let her slip away again. He wasn't going to give up this time. Over the next few weeks, Jack and Emily's relationship continued to grow, slowly but surely. They spent time together whenever they could, sometimes in quiet parks, other times in small cafes where they could talk without the distractions of their hectic lives. Emily was still cautious, but Jack could see the change in her. Her walls were slowly starting to come down, and each moment they shared felt like a small victory. Jack was determined to be patient. He knew that trust couldn't be rushed, and he wasn't about to make the same mistake of pushing her too fast. Lisa continued to be a steady presence in their lives, offering advice and encouragement when needed. Jack often found himself grateful for her understanding and support. She had been through so much on her own, raising Emily without him, yet she had never shown resentment. One afternoon, as Jack was leaving a meeting, he got a call from Lisa. Jack, Emily wants to talk to you about something, Lisa said. She's been thinking a lot about you lately, and she wants to know if you're serious about being in her life. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He had always known that this moment would come, but he hadn't expected it to happen so soon. Of course I'm serious, he replied quickly. I've been doing everything I can to prove that to her. I'm not going anywhere. I know you're serious, Jack, Lisa said gently, but it's important that Emily feels secure in that. She's had a lot of uncertainty in her life, and she needs to know that this time, things will be different. Jack swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words. I understand, he said quietly. I'll make sure she knows. That evening, Jack and Emily met again at the same park where they had first talked. Emily was sitting on the bench, her hands clasped in her lap, her gaze focused on the ground. Jack sat down next to her, unsure of how to begin. Hey, Em, he said softly. She looked up at him, her eyes still guarded, but there was something in them that made him think she was ready to take another step. I've been thinking a lot, too, Emily said quietly, her voice hesitant but sincere. I know you're trying, and I know you want to be a part of my life. But I need to know. I need to know that you won't leave again, that you won't disappear like you did before. Jack felt his chest tighten at her words. The pain in her voice was undeniable, but it only made him more determined. I won't leave, Emily, he said firmly, his voice full of conviction. I'm here for you, and I'm not going anywhere. I made a mistake by not being there before, but I'm not making that mistake again. Emily looked at him for a long moment, as if searching for any hint of doubt in his eyes. Jack held her gaze, his heart racing as he waited for her response. Finally, Emily nodded, just barely, but it was enough. Okay, she said quietly. I think I believe you. Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him. It wasn't the end of their journey, but it was a huge step forward. They had made progress, and he knew that with time, Emily would trust him fully. Thank you, Emily, he said softly, reaching out to gently touch her hand. I won't let you down. I promise. Emily smiled, a small, uncertain smile, but it was a start. Jack smiled back, knowing that this was only the beginning. They had a long road ahead of them, but he was ready for it. He was ready to be the father Emily deserved, and he was ready to build a future with her, step by step, no matter how long it took. The days that followed were a mix of small victories and setbacks, but Jack was determined to prove himself to Emily. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but the moments they shared, however brief, gave him hope. He spent more time with her, learning about her likes, her dislikes, and the things that made her smile. They played basketball at the park, just the two of them, and even though Emily was hesitant at first, she eventually started laughing, letting go of the wall she had built around herself. Jack didn't mind the awkward silences or the uncertainty in her eyes. He took it all in stride because he knew that with time, they could get through it together. Emily had started asking more questions about his life. She wanted to know what his work was like, what it felt like to be a billionaire, and how he spent his days. Jack was careful with his answers, never wanting to overwhelm her with the vast differences between their lives. But as they spent more time together, Jack realized that Emily wasn't interested in the wealth or the status. She just wanted to know the man behind the title, the father who had been absent for so long. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch of Jack's penthouse, Emily spoke up. "Dad?" she said, testing the word, as if trying it on for the first time. Jack's heart skipped a beat at the sound of it. It felt so simple, yet so significant. "Yeah," he replied, turning to look at her. "I'm glad you're here," she said quietly, looking out at the city below. Jack smiled, his heart swelling with emotion. "I'm glad I'm here too, Emily," he said, his voice thick with feeling. "I'm not going anywhere." Emily turned to face him, her eyes serious. "I know. I believe you now." Jack could feel the weight of her words, the trust she was beginning to place in him. It wasn't everything, but it was enough for him to know that they were making progress. There were still moments when Emily pulled back, when she retreated into herself, and Jack understood. The journey wasn't going to be linear, and there would be times when it felt like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But he was ready for that. He would be patient. He had to be. Over time, Emily opened up more, sharing her fears, her dreams, and the things that made her feel uncertain. Jack listened, never interrupting, always giving her the space to express herself. He knew it wasn't just about being a father to her. It was about being someone she could rely on, someone who would never let her down again. One Saturday, as they were walking through the park again, Emily stopped suddenly and looked up at Jack. "Dad, do you think I could ever be like you?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Jack stopped, walking, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. "I don't know," Emily said, her hands in her pockets. "I mean, you have everything. You're successful. You do important things. I don't know if I can ever do that." Jack knelt down in front of her, bringing himself to her eye level. "You don't have to be like me, Emily," he said gently. "You don't need to follow my path. You just need to be yourself. That's all I want. I want you to be the best version of you, whatever that looks like." Emily's expression softened, and for the first time in a while, she smiled. Jack's heart swelled with pride. "Thanks, Dad," she said quietly. Jack stood up, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. This was what he had been working toward. Not just the idea of being a father, but truly being there for Emily, supporting her in whatever way she needed. He didn't have all the answers, but he was learning, and that was enough for now. The road ahead would be long, but they would walk it together, step by step. As the weeks went by, Jack and Emily settled into a new rhythm. Jack made it a priority to be present in Emily's life, whether it was attending her school events or simply spending time together on weekends. Slowly, the bond between them strengthened, though it wasn't always easy. Emily still had moments of doubt, moments where she would pull back, unsure of how to process all the changes. But Jack never pushed her. He was patient, always giving her the space she needed, while reassuring her that he was there for her, no matter what. One Saturday afternoon, Jack invited Lisa to meet him at a cafe to talk. He had been thinking a lot about their situation and knew it was time to have an honest conversation with her. As soon as Lisa sat down across from him, Jack spoke up. "I've been thinking a lot about Emily," he began, his voice serious. "I want to make sure I'm doing this right. I don't want to mess things up, but I know I need help. I need your advice." Lisa looked at him for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "Jack, you're doing fine," she said softly. You're showing her that you care. That's what matters most. The rest will come with time. Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know, but I can't help but feel like I'm missing something. I want to be the best father I can be for her. I want to make up for all the time we lost. Lisa reached across the table and placed a hand on his. You're already doing that, Jack. It's not about perfection. It's about showing up. Every day, and you're doing that. You've made a difference already. Jack looked at her, grateful for her support. Thank you, Lisa, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know what I'd do without you. Lisa smiled, a soft, understanding smile. You've got this, Jack. You're already there. Just keep being there for her. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had been so focused on what he hadn't done that he had forgotten to appreciate the progress he had made. He had come a long way, and so had Emily. That evening, after the conversation with Lisa, Jack went to see Emily. They spent the evening at the park, just the two of them, walking along the path they had walked so many times before. As they reached the end of the trail, Emily stopped and turned to him. Dad, she said, her voice uncertain. I've been thinking. I think I'm ready to be your daughter. I mean, I know I already am, but I think I'm ready to really be a part of your life. Jack's heart swelled with pride as he looked at her. I'm so proud of you, Emily, he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. And I'm so glad to have you in my life. Emily smiled, a genuine smile, and for the first time in a long time, Jack felt a sense of peace. They still had a long road ahead of them, but in that moment, he knew they were on the right path. No matter what happened in the future, he would always be there for her. And that was enough. Emily had accepted him, and now he had to continue proving that he could be the father she deserved. They would take it one day at a time, but for now, they were both content. Together.